everybody to another episode of the San Luis Obispo Real Estate Podcast from San Luis Obispo, California, with the group here, the awesome group. We are missing one today, so I'll introduce first Miss Bobby Kelly. How are you?
Lovely. Happy to be here.
I'm glad you're here. Speaking of glad you're here, JT, I'm glad you're here too.
Well, thanks, man. I'm never lovely, but I'm glad I'm here too.
You're never going to let that go.
No.
Also glad you're here too is Mr. Magers. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. And my favorite topic, so I'm really especially happy to be here.
It's the beginning of the month. And then this guy over here to my right, I'm not going to forget him. Mr. Kingman, how are you, sir?
I'm doing good. How many neighbors did you say? Albert said something earlier about his neighborhood Christmas party, and he invites his neighbors over to it. How many neighbors?
We have a fun. It's not as fun as the one you guys do. Okay, so
you don't know that. You don't know that.
One of my hobbies is I like playing music, and so throwing a party gives me an opportunity to play music with a band, and so I get to pretend I'm cool for a short period of time, but then eventually I wake up the next day and it's just temporary.
What do you play?
Guitar.
Okay. What kind of music?
Whatever is going to get the audience to sing along.
Okay.
So I'm.
So do you play Christmas music with your guitar?
At this time of year, not usually in July.
Okay. Got it. Good
Next
answer.
time, I feel like we have to bring him back with the guitar now because the people are going to want to hear.
It's going to happen. So Hal was just talking about doing an event at the Fremont Theater for our clients and doing something like that. Maybe we'll have Albert. Albert, what's your band name?
Sir?
My band name?
Yeah, come on. On the fly. What's your band name?
So me and a bunch of dads in the neighborhood, okay, one of them was in a band once, okay? And so he would go to the studio and practice, and there was this annoying metal band next door that they nicknamed the Filth Nuggets because the band was so bad, okay?
Yeah.
So one night when we're practicing, we're like, we should call ourselves the Filth Nuggets.
The Filth Nuggets, yeah.
And so my dad band is the Filth Nuggets.
Oh, wow, okay.
It's not the worst band name I've ever heard.
It's not the worst, but it is designed to try to be the worst band name you've ever heard.
Yeah. So I think the worst one I've ever heard, and this is serious, is the Giggling Cucarachas.
Okay, that'd be a bad one too.
That wouldn't be a great.
Well, here, are we going to talk about real estate?
We are. It's
Okay, good.
It's the beginning of the month, so you guys know what to do. Bobby, I'm sorry, JT, are you leading us off?
Well, no, I just want to say something.
Okay.
Hal's not with us, and we've done, this will probably be the first podcast without Hal.
Very first.
Mm-hmm. But as much as I miss Hal, what I want to say is how much I appreciate you two, because you guys, when we joined Keller Williams, I think it was 3 or 4 years ago, we loved the prior broker. I've been around with Hal's team for 8 years now. We loved our prior broker. We're still great friends. But you guys bring to us a breadth of knowledge and expertise that has made a huge difference on our business. And I know all our agents and our entire customer service team would agree with that. So for me, it's fun to have you guys here today because I know I'm going to learn something because you guys sit so far higher in the organization and in the industry that you bring stuff to us that we just have never experienced. So thank you for all of that.
That's, I think, one of the best compliments you can give us because that's that's what we're trying to do. That's what we're trying to be. And so when you're trying to be that and then somebody gives you the compliment of thank you, like that you were really feeling it, I think that's as good as you can feel. So thanks for saying that.
You should feel that way.
Yeah.
And I think you said it earlier. I mean, Keller is an education company. That's something that we're known for. So we take that pretty seriously. And it's always cool when people appreciate what you're doing.
We do appreciate you.
Yeah. And we love you guys, obviously.
And so we're going to miss Hal, but we're glad you guys are here.
On with the show, right?
And let's do it.
So we don't have Hal today, but we do have Albert. And I always love the conversations I get to have with you, Albert. You can give us a little bit of your backstory with what you run on a day-to-day basis, but you really do bring us a different take on the market and really widen our lens. We're really local here and get to see what's right in front of us, but you bring us that full California picture. So what is your day filled with as far as like you run?
What does my day look like? Driving the entire distance of California back and forth.
Part of that, yes.
So how many agents do you have?
1,100 agents.
1,100. Do you know all their names?
I know Hal's name. I know JT's name.
He knows a lot of them. You'd be surprised.
No, that's important. And that's probably, I've actually had, that agent count has been roughly where we've been at for a while. Cause there is a point where like I do, it's very, very important to me that I have a personal connection with the people that I'm working with.
I bet.
It's my job to pour in and try to improve their businesses to the best degree that I can.
Yeah.
And you can only really do that if you're really personally engaged.
So sometimes your job's almost like a politician. You're shaking hands and kissing babies, huh?
Is that a compliment?
Yes. Yeah. No. Yeah. It was. I'm full of compliments today.
Yeah. To some degree, it's like half teacher, half politician.
Yeah.
And half also trying to lead by example.
Right.
Because ultimately you can say whatever you want, but people will really behave according to what you actually do.
Right.
So, that's.
But tell us about the locations you're in, because really,
Yeah.
you work closely with the staff there. They're maybe doing more of the kissing babies, but you are bringing us the information that we need to actually run the company.
Yeah. So here for example, we are fortunate enough to be the largest brokerage in San Luis Obispo County. That's also the case for most of the places that we do business in. And so we also do business in places that are very, very rural, like Tulare County, for example. And also all the way down to LA and Ventura Beach. And so really, if you look at that, that's basically a sampling of every market type in California. So what's cool about that is a lot of the information that we get in the media is really delayed. I'm talking about we're looking at stuff that's really only been locked down about 4 months ago. So I can really actually see real time information. And I think that puts me in a real nice pole position to be able to read that data and then help everybody understand where we're going. And honestly, I these days, I think I know more about the mortgage market than I ever intended to, because, when the rates went up and the transaction volume went down and the number of listings went down, I was like, well, whatever this is, I need to understand it on a deeper level. I'm angry that I have to, but at the end of the day, if something starts affecting your life, the first line of defense is understand it. Right. And so now it's been 2.5 years since we've experienced that shift. And I feel like we're moving into a new chapter, but I think especially I'm really excited for the conversation today, because we've been kind of leading up to kind of a certainty where we think, okay, the Fed's going to keep lowering rates, and we've got this zombie apocalypse of buyers that we're going to experience. And again, that's not really what I mean to say. We really have an unlimited amount of buyers right now. What we're missing is there's not enough homes, right? There's not enough homes listed because of the lock-in, because of the low rates in the past. So I come on the podcast and we have a couple conversations about it. And what's kind of annoying about being in that dialogue is being completely wrong 3 weeks later, right? Like having to completely reboot because new information happens. And, I was operating from a complete sense of certainty that every time in the past, the Fed starts lowering rates, and we are going to get a lower rate the next meeting, and a lower rate the next meeting, and a lower rate the next meeting, because that's the only thing that's ever happened. So good news is we are going to get, most likely, the futures market is saying there's an 80% chance we're going to get another rate drop in December. So great, we can count on that. But here's something interesting. In the next 3 meetings, which I believe is January, March, and April, the futures market is completely turned upside down, to the point where now there's a 10% chance of an increase in March and April. There's only a 30 to 40% chance of a decrease in rates. And the majority is betting on nothing changing. And so that's now kind of resetting the entire dialogue about, well, what does that mean for 2025? Well, it still means it's going to be a really tight market, right? Because we're still going to have more buyers than we have houses. So that's not going to change.
Is this, I'm not trying to get political, but is this a result of the election?
And I'd say it's not in terms of betting on one team or the other. It's just the natural reaction to uncertainty, right? Meaning that if you don't know what's going to happen next, it's really tough to price it out.
So the certainty is which team won. The uncertainty is what impact is that team going to have on the environment.
Correct. Yeah. And because the team that won is willing to do much more unprecedented and bigger things that have happened in the past. And that means that the potential results of that are, who knows?
More uncertain.
Yeah, exactly. Well, for example, historically, the Fed's always lowered rates one month after another, or one meeting after another. They're not every month. And it's surprising that the futures market's saying, we don't know if that's going to happen. We don't know if they're going to decide to lower that or not. So
we were pretty confident predicting the future a couple months ago. And now that confidence has kind of gone.
I learned a long time ago, always put the asterisk. If anybody tells you that they know what's going to happen next, they're lying. All right.
Right.
So but then it's still fun, and it is educational to try to, because if you can be right 7 out of 10 times, it's still valuable, because I said this today at one of our sales meetings. You know, your business isn't what you did yesterday. Your business isn't what you did today. The business is what you're going to do tomorrow, right? Like that's actually the story of your business. And deciding what you're going to do tomorrow has to be informed by what's around you. What world are you going to live in? You know, are you going to be in a big, heavy transaction market, or do we need to get ready for a repeat of 2024 and 2023? And I will say that based on the new information, what it looks like, here's the positive side though. Despite the uncertainty, despite rates, I can't believe the rates got all the way down to 6%. I mean, it was like 6.1 was the best moment. And then 2 weeks before the election, all the way back to 7 again. I mean, just almost instantaneously. And that happened after we got a 50 basis point Fed drop.
Right.
Right. It's this weird swing that
And we saw what
further
happened.
evidence that anything's possible.
And we saw what happened to transactions in late August, September, before rates started going back up. We saw, hey, the market was picking up. We were having fun again.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh. October was great.
promising, yeah.
October was wonderful because we hit that low 6 right in September. And then we started seeing transaction volume that we hadn't seen for a long time.
Right.
Right. And it was really nice to see. But then the rates went back up and then we almost had the opposite experience in November. But I will say November was still about 10% better than November last year. Even though it was disappointing coming off October, it was still an improvement. So we have 2 months now of year over year gain in units. And I'm talking about this county specifically. Okay.
Right.
If we have that same 10% increase in the coming months, I think it's safe to say we can count on a 10% increase in activity next year. The thing is, I would have bet on a much bigger increase than that with the information that I had just 6 weeks ago. So that would be the data would currently show us having a very tight market with 10% more activity, which is still not terrible, but it's still going to be one of the, you see, it's weird. I was about to say slow. Ironic. I was about to call it a slow market, but it's really not a slow market. It's a market with nothing to buy, right? A slow market implies that, I'm going to go get a deal. I'm gonna run out there and take advantage of low activity. That is not the way to describe it. The way to describe it is like it's a shopping mall that has like half the groceries are missing on the shelves. That is the perfect way to describe the market right now.
Well, as we have been working on our business plan for 2025, we built into our business plan about a 25% increase in production. Now, I know that most of us were thinking that interest rates would be our friend at some point in 2025.
Yeah.
I'm more uncertain of whether that will come true early in the year now than I was 2 months ago. You know,
I think the top 5 just economic groups like Goldman Sachs, that kind of thing, Bank of America, that put out projections. I mean, think about this strange place we're in. In October, we got to taste 6.1%, right? It happened. And now the top 5 predictors of where rates will be by the end of next year are roughly agreeing it'll be 6.25 by the end of next year. I mean, how wrong was I when I was like, we'll be at 4.75, 5.25 by the end of next year?
Yeah. Well, I was in the same place you were.
You know who wasn't?
You weren't. Oh, come on.
Just saying.
Hey, optimism trumps pessimism every time.
I agree.
Bobby.
I want it. Trust me.
Yeah. And the thing is, we could just be going through this temporary uncertainty thing. But I think you always have to just say, well, what does the data say right now? Right. And understand that could change in 6 weeks like we just experienced. So the data right now looks at an unseasonably good winter. You know, it looks like the winter will be better than last year. And it looks like a 10% increase.
Okay. Well, that's better than
And
10% decrease,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
We're moving in the right direction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. And eventually we've got to get back to average, right?
Yeah.
Sometime we're going to get back to average.
Right. And average, to put this in perspective, I think we had, it was 191 sales. Yeah. So the tool that I used to analyze, so we had 191 residential sales in November, but we had 350 in 2019, right? So it's 50 unit difference between 2019. I use that year as a litmus test because I consider that to be the last normal year, where you don't want to compare it to 2022, 2020. Like those are non-normal years. So 2019, think about that. Like that would be, if you guys are 10% of the market, that would mean that you would have sold 15 more homes, like in that same month, if we had a normal amount of transactions. I just mean, and when I define normal, I mean like the consistent number that you could have counted on happening every year for 30 years, right? Like that's what I'm defining as normal. And so, you know, it's a bummer to see that. And I do know that we still operate in the certainty of we return to normal at some point. Like that,
right.
that we will. Like it's the same number of people, like owning and living in a home has not gone out of style. It is, people tend to dig roofs when it rains. Like they tend to like having a place that can store furniture, right? Like the pros and cons of home ownership are like, every year that we're alive is only more extreme than it was before. You know, especially living in California. I mean, California's gotten to the point where it's like a private club of landowners. You know, it's tough to stay here for a long period of time if you're not owning real estate. And so the case has never been stronger. So normal is an inevitability. It's just a question of when. Yeah. And from the consumer's point of view, I also, because this is mostly advice now for our fellow folks in the industry, right? Because they're planning their businesses around, you know, what's going to happen next year. You know, when I think about what does this mean for consumers, I still go back to that. We don't know when normal comes back and you don't want to buy a house then.
Right.
Okay. Like that the pent up demand that we continue to develop every month that goes by that we're still not back to normal is a huge number of people who have gotten divorced, had a change of life, have had kids move out, have had kids move back in, have decided they're working from home now. All of that aggregated demand keeps building like a spring. And there will be a watershed moment where that breaks loose. And that is going to be a really, really terrible time from the point of view of a buyer. It's going to be great for sellers, okay? Sellers will have...
great for agents.
Yeah, and it'll be great for agents. But buyers specifically will really hate that market.
Yeah. It'll be like a 2021 market, right?
Yeah.
Where you're competing with 3, 4, 5, 10 other buyers for one property.
It's like, how do I get this? How do I get this offer accepted? Like
right.
Yeah. And we can't write those letters anymore to help. That's a whole nother subject. that I just try to touch a little electrical wire there, just for fun.
You know, one of the things that we track for Hal's team is the volume, and we kind of went over that at our sales meeting today. And in 2019, our volume was $78 million, which sounds like a big amount of business, and it is, except that in 2021 it was $165 million, and that's the total amount of the price of every property that Hal's team sold. And this year we're going to end up in the mid 130s. It looks like, with what we've got in escrow that'll close between now and December 31st.
Yeah.
So just some perspective on the not just the transaction number, but the volume number. Our volume number is up about 4% per transaction over a year ago. Now that doesn't say that housing prices are up 4%, but I'll bet you housing prices are up pretty close.
But they
to 4%.
are up. Yeah, I think that's fair. So
Yeah.
so that goes into the advice you're probably giving your clients right now, you know, when you're looking at being realistic with what it's going to take.
Right. And you know, Jeff's pointed this out many times before. You know, I tease about what's the best day to buy real estate, and what's the answer?
Yesterday.
Yesterday. It's always yesterday.
Depends on how far your time machine goes.
Yeah.
Yeah. But usually tomorrow's not a better day than yesterday.
Right.
Now, every once in a while you'll run into a tomorrow being a better day because we had a dip in prices. Do we see any data out there now? You're sitting here at 50,000 feet looking down on this business. Is there
About
any
price softness?
data on prices softening
No.
in
none.
2025?
No, I will say there's been some wacky. It's not clear right now. I don't see any evidence. Again, not enough houses I don't see any evidence of an environment that could cause prices to drop, because you'd have our inventory, because it's supply and demand, right? It's like gravity.
Right.
So our inventory right now is 6 times lower than it was in 2008 when we had price drops. Meaning that, like, if there's 100 homes for sale now, there were 600 homes for sale then that were just sitting on the market. That's how you get price drops, because there's just more inventory that can be absorbed.
Right.
Right. And there really is, I want to say, nobody knows what's going to happen in the future, but there's no historical precedent for a time when inventory is really, really low and you get price drops. You have to have really high inventory.
Right.
So as long as there's competition, what could change that, though? And I will say, because now it's like, well, let's clear the table and let's look at all the possibilities, right? What could change that is if rates go to like 12%. Like some geopolitical thing happens that we don't see coming, and that creates a lot of inflation out of thin air. The Fed starts going the other direction with rates. Now we're dealing with rates that we haven't seen before. Like, yeah, that would be an anxiety moment
You haven't seen them before. I have.
Right. Yeah.
You've bought them before.
By the way, you know what's crazy? When the rates were like 18%, we were still selling the normal amount of houses.
And home values were still going up.
And home values were still going up. But the difference was we didn't just conclude a decade of rates being 3%.
Right.
Which is actually the issue. It's not that like high rates really cause the problem. It's that the low rates prior to having very high rates is what's really kind of messed up the market.
My daughter bought a house last summer, got in at 6.99, and she is unhappy as heck with 6.99. And I'm trying to tell her, I would have been thrilled if that were my first house.
Comparison, right?
Yeah.
You know, my first house was, 10 and a half on a 5.1,
And it's inevitable, though, that she's not going to have to live with that 699.
Well, that's what I tell her.
Yeah.
And I hope I'm right, because I've been wrong for about a year and a half now.
Yeah.
They're going down. They're going down. Now they're not going down
Hold
yet.
on tight.
Right. Like you give her the advice to take an adjustable rate because you're like, there's no way. And then
They
next
went
thing you
down
know,
to
it's 18%.
6, and she goes, "Should I refinance?" They hadn't even made their first payment yet.
Yeah.
I go, "No, hold on. It's going to get better than 6. We should have refinanced then,
6,
right?"
yeah.
You
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
So, but on the pricing side, there's just no data that's out there.
Literally none.
So if you're a buyer, to your point that you've made every time you've come on one of our podcasts,
Yes.
get her done.
And it's not just that. It's also the person who's sitting on that low rate but is getting really tired of their current environment. So it's the other thing too is like there is a point where you gotta just live your life and not time your life choices around the mortgage rate that you have access to.
Right.
Okay. Because the thing is, every seller is going to be a buyer most likely. Now, and most of those sellers are going to be buyers locally, right? Now, some will move out of town, and so like this also applies to you. You don't want to do that flip in that market that we're going to be at some point. And again, the magic number continues to poll at being 5.5%. Like that's when consumers will, say that they'll believe that rates are normal again, right? That's when you're watching mortgage rates. I would argue you want to be in the market before that happens. The difference is when we sat down before, I was freaking certain that we were going to have something with a 5 on it in the beginning of next year. I can no longer say that's the case. That could be the end of next year. So you might have bought yourself a year to make that transition. Maybe, but we don't know what's going to happen. That's just the decision that you got to make personally about, do you believe us? Okay. If that's yes, get in before it's 5.5.
Yeah. How long do I want 3 kids in 1 bedroom?
Right.
You're bound to give out.
I need a bigger house.
Right. Exactly. Right. And that there is, think about it. You could have been waiting at this point 2 years to make that decision. So living in a non-ideal situation for 2 years, there is a point where, now that we're looking, it could be another year.
Yeah.
It could be another year.
time.
And it's also temporary. Like there's not a lot of evidence that it's going to go the other direction. So
The beauty of San Luis Obispo County and the real estate market, for those of us who've been here a while, is it makes us look really smart. Because all we had to do was get in.
Yeah.
And there aren't that many roller coasters in real estate. In the last 70 years, 90% of the years, home values went up, 10% they went down. So we don't have that many dips in our roller coaster. So if you get into the San Luis Obispo County real estate market and stick around for a while, my guess is you're going to look back and go, I was really smart.
Yep, you're going to look pretty good.
So it's just having the guts to jump in for the first time buyer.
Right.
Oh, what a great point, though, for right now, because that's also true at this very moment for the people who are like, I don't want to give up this 3.5 to 4.5% loan for the home that I actually need.
Yeah.
That still applies to you too. There is a price of waiting.
Right.
There is a price of waiting. And the difference is the heartache of what the future holds on the other side of 5.5.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like this is a conversation we have had. I mean, we're saying the same things. There's not enough homes, jump while you can, but we're here to bring you what's real. So that's the information we have for our market update.
So
Absolutely.
because it's the holiday season, we're just regifting some
There you
old
go.
podcasts.
There you go. It's the truth. We wish it was a little different, but it is what it is.
Yeah, we can continue this forever. So let's close it on up. We're running out of time here. So anybody have any final thoughts?
It is the holiday season. I'm sorry, I'm taking back my gift. It's been repossessed.
You took back the apocalypse of zombie buyers.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm replacing it with a big question mark.
Yeah,
Right.
So the Riddler.
Hey, the thing about a question mark is we're always dealing with a question mark, but I think around here with Hal Sweasey at the helm, we know we're going to impact our business more than the market is because of the things we do every day to help people.
Right. And the thing you do tomorrow.
There you
That
go.
thing you do tomorrow.
Yeah.
Well,
That's
on
right.
that note, we're going to send it back to James.
Words of wisdom. All right, everybody, thank you so much. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel so you get all the latest information. And as well, we are starting I called it Ask Hal a long time ago. We tried to do this before. If you have any questions you want us to talk about on the podcast, you can contact us. The information will be on the description in YouTube. And then Mr. Kingman, you'll throw it in on
It'll be on the
sound.
podcast as well.
Soundbite.
The number and
All
it's coming up here in just a second on the podcast.
We might even pick it for an entire episode, and we'll give you a shout out too. So if it's a great question, we'll make sure and give you credit for it. Lady, gentlemen, thank you so much. This was a pretty exciting podcast as always. Everybody that listened to us, thank you so much, and we will talk to you next week. Bye-bye, guys.